Hello, everyone in Zoom land. I think we're getting started now. I want to introduce for those of you who don't know, the head of virology, the division head, Dr. Keith Jerome, and
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
This is a great idea to do this. I have to, first of all, because I get busy and doing other things, and between Tamara and Hannah and Lisa, and they said, you know, it's been 2+ years since we sort of all got together and had something like this. And I'm not sure it's something that we routinely did, but we did this 2 years ago, remember. It's like most of you who are in the room were here then, maybe not everybody, and certainly not everybody on Zoom, but we all were kind of pushed up against the back wall, and it was really a crazy time right at the beginning of the COVID outbreak. And this caused me to reflect back on that and a couple of things. First of all, I would not have predicted that at that time, with my 30 years of being a virologist, that we'd all, except for me, be back in this room with our masks still on 2+ years later. But here we are. And I'll come back to that I think as we think about the future of this division, that future involves COVID. Our future is not driven by COVID, but it's the reality, and it's something we have to live with. It also caused me to reflect on how we really didn't know what was going to happen at that time. We spent a lot of time subsequently. I spent time advising folks, really, you know, from the city all the way to, you know, ASM group that was going to advise the White House advisor who never got listened to at all. But, you know, as a nation, I'm not sure that we did everything right. But as close as humanly possible, I really think that this division and you guys did everything right for 2 years. I mean, you know, not that there weren't a few hiccups, and the ones that were my fault, I apologize for. But, you know, we've done a tremendous amount, 4.9 million COVID tests and counting. It would have been fun if we could have made it to 5 before we did this. If we just waited another couple of weeks, we'd have made it. 4,000 to 6,000 tests per day on average. And you guys know that that sort of, you know, that varies. And there are the down days, you know, the Mondays and so forth. 9 hours on average turnaround time. If you go to one of our community sites, you'll get your results in 9 hours. Really amazing. Something that this program did incredibly well from the very beginning, which was get results back to people in a meaningful time, so if they could actually do something with this. Remember all the stories about, you know, it took two weeks to get your result back in California and all that. We never had that. Part of that was your hard work. Part of that was just the wisdom of the department as a whole that said, we can't pretend we can do a COVID test for everybody in the country, but we're going to take care of our people and get them the results they need. So that was great. Every day now, 20% of the tests we do are positive, essentially, 15 to 20%. That's crazy. I mean, what that means is, of course, first of all, we're not really doing enough tests. We should be doing more. Remember at the beginning, we said you want the rate of positivity to be, you know, 2 to 3%, means you're following things. Of course, now we have the rapid tests. I'll come back to that, how that affects us. But despite that, this laboratory is incredibly important. Not just PCR testing, you know, we've done literally tens of thousands of sequences over the past, gosh, many years now. We began to build a sequencing program. We brought in Alex, we brought in Pavitra. Incredibly successful. It allows the state to know what's going on. If you follow that, you know, every single way we've identified as the variants have changed, we're about half BA2 now, about a third BA 2.1.2, 12, and then of course the higher numbers, BA5 is here now, 5 or 10%. So everything's coming, and that'll continue to happen, and nothing will sneak up on us. So I mentioned sort of, you know, the outlook in terms of where COVID fits in, and as far as I can tell, this is the new normal. Okay, so you know, one thing that I felt strongly about from the beginning, you know, there was that sprint at the beginning, right, where we were it for the country for a little while, and then we were the ones who actually sort of knew and could advise. And of course, everything's spun up. Lots of people doing good work now. and it becomes much more a marathon, right? Or maybe it's a through hike on the Pacific Crest Trail. I don't know what the metaphor is, but it isn't something where you can run 100%, right? Or 110% all the time. And I try to recognize that we're all human beings, and we can, we can't break ourselves because this is really important work we're doing. So that said, I don't know what's going to happen with the next wave, the next variant. I have personally bet, and therefore the department has bet on this continuing to be a problem. There'll be new variants. One thing we worry about, what happens if the next variant turns out that it breaks all the rapid tests that we all got in the mail from the federal government. And then suddenly all these people who are used to getting these tests every day decide, University of Washington will test us, right? So what happens then if the 4,000 goes to 15,000 or 20,000? So we've invested a lot in automation. As many of you know, we have a lot more automated testing capacity than we need right now. That was a conscious decision. And I was happy to tell the departmental leadership that if anybody from the school fussed at them, just say it's Keith's fault. He said it's better to be more ready than less ready when you need it. So we'll see, but we are ready. So everything's not COVID. We're still doing all the other viruses. Many of you don't even work on COVID, right? You work on all the other stuff, and that's, believe me, that's incredibly important. And I love to be able to think about these other things and not think about COVID all the time. We went back pretty quickly to a full menu. So remember, during the worst part of the pandemic, we cut back on a lot of the other testing. So it was hard to get your CMV, and we took some things offline, the more esoteric stuff, the HHV6 and so forth. Everything's back. So we're providing full medical care. There is no impact of COVID on all of our other patients who need to get testing. The turnaround times are completely normal. It's transparent to those patients and the providers. That's incredibly important. I won't spend a lot of time talking about our research, but I will say that our research efforts and collaborations are strong, and frankly stronger than they've ever been. Part of that is just the stature that this program has built, the press, I guess, for lack of a better term, and not just formally, we're on CNN or something, but just the word of mouth. We're doing more work than ever with manufacturers of new tests to help them validate their tests. And I think it's really important. Some people have argued to me, we're just helping our competitors. Well, we're doing fine. And we're helping the practice of virology for the nation and world. And to me, that's the driver of the decisions we make. We've been incredibly important for the vaccine efforts, involved to some degree in pretty much all of them. And then in a very big way in the Novavax study, and by God, they're going to finally go to the FDA. And that's not because we were slow in getting results. The delays have been for multiple other manufactured reasons of others. Our results were to them well over a year ago now. And then therapeutics. So, and this is not just COVID, but really more broadly for therapeutics for viral infections. And I'm really happy that we can do that because as a physician, my specialty is to make the diagnosis, but I know that that's just the beginning of a patient's journey. And so when we can contribute to actually helping them deal with their infection better, that's fantastic. And then, these are sort of external things that we help with when we move the field forward. And then, the faculty of this program have their own research interests, and our collaborators have their own research interests, and we're as active as ever in moving those forward. And I've made the argument that all this capacity that we've built, all the fantastic things we can do, and all the automation and robotics are just going to move virology research forward faster than ever. And so I'm incredibly bullish on the future of the field as a whole. Okay, transitions. So it's also a time of a lot of change. I think it's part of the reason why these guys said it would be good to get folks into the room and talk. Everybody's familiar with the COVID testing lab down in Renton. Got booted out of here. Timing wasn't optimal in many ways because we didn't get a lot of warning and there's still a pandemic. The flip side is that building was in the long-term plans of the department. So we've sort of been the what do they call that? The early settlers or whatever. So that lab is fully functional. It's working. I wouldn't, I don't think every quite little hiccup's completely ironed out yet, but we're getting there. And lots of people have contributed so heavily to that. And I thought about naming names. I realized I'd miss people, so I'm not going to say that. Go through. Many of you were involved in that, and just my thanks for making that work so well. I want to come back to Renton in a little bit. In a little bit later, but staying on the theme of transitions, big transition in leadership. So I feel a personal sense of loss. I will just say that, truly almost a grieving, because at least two people who've been a lot to me since I've had this role. That's Tamara, who's up here, and Mei Li, and I think most of you know they're both leaving. And I don't know where to go first. But Tamara has been an incredibly valuable source of wisdom and advice for me for a very long time. And Tamara fills in a lot of gaps. Tamara has some wonderful interpersonal skills, and when I lose patience with foolishness, Tamara can often talk me down, and so I definitely appreciate that. Gosh, I don't even know how long you've actually been here, starting as the laboratory man.
2006.
2006. Okay, so laboratory operations manager starting 2006, and then I really wanted Tamara to be the division administrator. So thank you for all that time. And then Mei Li, who's been here substantially longer than I have. And I really thought Mei Li would never leave. I was shocked that this would happen. But what a privilege to work with such an amazing scientist. And I'm going to say this in just as a deep compliment, an absolute lack of ego, just to make the science move forward, and just caring about the science and the virology and the patients we help. So what a privilege. So thank you. Oh my gosh. So I will feel this loss personally and deeply. But we do have great new people coming in. So Hannah Egger's up here. Hannah's come to us. I looked at Hannah's CV, and it was like everything just happened so fast for Hannah. So like Hannah was going to make a career in a clinical microbiology over at the U, and then moved on out of that. Did a little bit of admin stuff, and then came over here in March of 2020 as our clinical laboratory technician lead. And was that because of COVID that you came? Yes, it was. Okay, so you came. So we needed somebody to help make all this work, basically, and Hannah did an amazing job through that. It became our laboratory operations manager, and really was the person I really wanted to see take over this job. And her arm is nearly healed at this point to do this. So congratulations. And then I'm also just thrilled. And I really, these are hard positions. These are shoes you just don't fill easily, right? So I was really, I thought, oh my God, we're never going to find people do this, but when I was looking for someone to fill Mei Li's shoes, I said, oh my gosh, somebody who's got these lab management skills, these people skills to lead this group, and then the ability to work with a bunch of crazy PIs all the time, and then actually knows molecular biology and just all this stuff. I'm never going to find a person like it. It will never happen. And amazingly enough, Eileen Perez-Osorio came over to us. And I was absolutely thrilled with your CD and just also just interviewing you and realizing that what a lucky break we've had with this. So lots of you have probably met Eileen. She didn't come up through our program. She's been over the state lab for a long time. PhD from Montana State in microbiology. Okay, all right. So go Grizzlies. What are you? Bobcats. Okay. All right, great. And then worked at the state lab. Actually, was a supervisor for the molecular and virology laboratories, as well as the pulse field gel electrophoresis. Probably won't be doing that, but okay. And supervised that lab, then moved up to become director of the Environmental Laboratory Sciences Office. So these are the, I mean, they do a lot of things, but the one that close to my heart, I think you keep the shellfish. You make sure we don't kill ourselves with oysters and yeah. Okay, so thank you for that. Sorry you did. But anyway, you know, we just clicked right away, and Eileen is just tremendous background in management and great personal skills, as well as a top-notch scientist and a lot of enthusiasm for research. So I think we're going to hit it off extremely well. So I'm thrilled that we have these new folks.
Very excited, everybody.
Yeah. So if you haven't met Eileen yet, and it sounds like you've been pretty proactive on meeting folks, but if you haven't, please introduce yourself. Regarding the transitions and the folks who are moving on, there's a celebration today. Don't forget that. It's over at Fred Hutch, because they won't even rent it. Has everybody heard this? They won't even rent us the rooftop decks anymore here. They're so pissed at you. So yeah. Anyway, fine. So it's in the courtyard right there in the middle outside of the cafeteria. It's either Litwin or Listwin, and we're going to have a bet on that. But anyway, it's right there in the middle. You'll find us because it'll be loud. All right, so let's look to the future. I mentioned a couple of things. Let's start with Renton, just to knock this out. Very clear, obviously, COVID is down there. It's likely that the rest of the clinical program will move down. It's almost certain that the entire clinical program will move down there as that gets built out, and you know, that will be the expectation from the department. I feel that's not negotiable. It's less clear what's going to happen with the research program. I would love to tell you with certainty so you guys can plan, but I simply can't. It's not an easy consideration. There's going to be incredible, pressure for that to happen, I'll say. There are drawbacks to that, as you can imagine. For many of us, it's farther away, which is not ideal. For many of us, it's closer, and that's great. So there's winners and losers there. But obviously, proximity to our collaborators and so forth has been important. And so we're trying to work through those issues. You know, and I'm happy to talk about that more as these decisions are made. But they're not completely our or my decision to make. So we're gonna have to hold out. So I wish I could tell you a little bit more, but that's sort of where we are right now. With that bit of uncertainty, the rest of our future, I think, is incredibly bright. And if we go Renton, it's bright too. And if we don't, it's bright. But first of all, I mentioned our stature. People know about the university when they come to us. I mean, we have more stuff to do, more opportunities. You know, these guys say yes to everything. No, by no means. You know, the vast majority of opportunities actually turn down because they're either not what we want to do, they're not advantageous for us, or they don't actually contribute to the field as a whole. So for many reasons, they don't work out. But people know about University of Washington Virology, and they know about your work. So we're financially strong. We've brought in a lot of revenue for the university. It's gone to the university, and you know, most of that is what it is. But we have helped keep the institution afloat through some hard times, and that's fine. We've gotten a share of that. That means we're in financially great shape. There's plenty of work to do. There's plenty of future opportunities. So there's really, you know, this is a stable place, and it's going to continue to be. And then, you know, finally, what makes my job good? What's made my job good ever since I had it was you guys, because you guys do great work, and you know, we have our little hiccups, but you know, it's generally, you know, fantastic. What makes it really great now is that sort of the people I report to, we have great relationships with, and that's, you know, maybe hasn't always been the case, but there's a lot of trust. There's a lot of trust in the judgment of the you know, faculty leadership, that when we say here's what virology should be doing, nobody second guesses. And it's why we were ready for COVID. It's why we've succeeded at so many things. And that just plays into that stability I'm talking about. So, you know, nobody's gonna start nickel and diming us on if we say we need a new robot because whatever, we can do that. If this instrument we think is needed, we need that. We need to develop a test, we can do that. So that's really fantastic, because that means that we've got a bright future that's actually led by people who know something about this business. And that's really what we want to do. So I'm super optimistic. You know, it's been 2 years. I probably should have come in and done this year. We probably won't let this go so long between doing it again. What was I supposed to say? I was supposed to say we're having a picnic.
Yes, we are. We are.
We're going to have a picnic. We don't know where. But we will. A good chance it may just be down the street at Fred Hutch. But details come with that. And Lisa, did you say September? Likely?
September, early September.
Early September, while the weather's still good, and or if the weather gets good, we'll see. So that's pretty much my remarks. You know, I hope you get a sense of, you know, my optimism, what I see going on. I don't know how much time I took with that. Yeah, about what I thought. So I'm happy to just take some questions now. If you're in the room, you can just blurt out. I think if you're on Zoom, you can
Put them in the chat.
put them in the chat, and Hannah will convey them to me.
Yes.
So are there things I didn't cover, things that are on your mind, things you want to hear more about? And if you just want to leave, that's fine too. You know, but I am here and I'm happy to discuss.
I have a question about science and public health. So like lingering positives with PCR, how is that played into people being advised to test the PCR? For example, my mom came to me with a question. She's afraid to get a PCR because it detects a past infection. She's no longer infectious. People are traveling.
Yeah. Well, travel can be its own ball game, right? And it changes a lot. You've seen this, you know, requirements for entering the country. We're still requiring a test to get back in the US if you travel abroad. Most recommendations now are based on time. So they're actually not based on testing. So, you know, once symptoms have resolved, you know, there's time, and all that stuff's available on the CDC website and is updated pretty frequently. Travel is its own ball game. CDC is involved in that, but of course, the actual regulations are enforced by FAA, so it can be a little bit different. So, you know, my advice to folks, like any of you guys, is, you know, when you have family members like that, just lead them through the web, help them, you know, like it's actually pretty clear there if you do this for a living. So I'd say just get them on there, show them that, walk them through exactly what this means. There's algorithms and they'll explain sort of everything you need to do to be sure that you're compliant with the most current recommendations. You know, they'll suddenly change and nobody sends out a text, you know, says, oh, by the way, we changed it from, you know, 5 days post symptoms to 4 now or something. Just have to look it up. Yeah.
I know that there are still a lot of unknowns with regard to research and where we may be moving to or not moving to. Is it possible that we'll move to the Hutch or maybe even stay in this building?
Well, I'd say everything's possible at this point. I'd say there, you know, but there's likelihood speech. So the likelihood of moving to Fred Hutch is probably pretty small, simply because of space constraints within Fred Hutch. If you look at the trajectory of the Hutch increase in space, Hutch would be due to make a new building, but they're actually have made a conscious decision to delay that, largely because of financial issues, I think. Not that the Hutch is in trouble financially, but, you know, it costs tens of millions of dollars to make a building. Typically, you know, you start at 100 million and go up. So it's not a trivial thing for presidents and trustees to decide on. You know, this building has a lot of huge advantages. And we do have a couple of years left on the lease too.
January 24.
January
So a year and a
24,
half.
okay, a year and a half. Look, right now, there's no way there's absolutely no way right now that they're going to renew that lease. I would assume. I mean, if you can't even get the deck, you know. So, but you know, I mean, things can change. And there's some wonderful things about this building, you know, that I personally think work really well for our program. But I think that would be a lift. You know, I want to be honest with you that I think that would be a lift. So I think the Hutch is almost impossible, is close to impossible to me. Anything online?
Nope.
No. All right, thank you. One last shot. All right, I'm gonna hang out for a little while. If anybody wants to come up and talk, I'll put my mask on. So thanks for coming.